Have you been looking for a way to stay focused on your goals and grow your MSP? Accountability groups from RocketMSP can help. We offer weekly accountability sessions that meet online with a group of your peers. Your success begins with accountability. Go to www.rocketmsp.io to join your accountability group today. All right, so we talked about a lot of things, man. So I kind of want to go in two different directions. One, I want to talk about, I know we're talking about SD-WAN, but I want to talk about VPN for a little bit.
Sure.
And so how do I want to, which direction do I need to take this? So first I want to talk about the nefarious person, the evil hacker guy. You know, you've watched the movies, They got the evil hacker guy, and then they show the picture of the map, and then they got the lines going from all these different cities all over the world, and that's him VPN tunneling in all these different places, and nobody can figure out where he is.
Right.
Can I do that? Is that how hacking works?
Well, to be honest with you, yes. People set up VPNs and they think they're getting similar type of functionalities they see in the movies because, now things show that I'm in Canada and I can watch things that are only available in Canada. While there's some similarities, the reason some of these technologies are grossly different is their proxy services. People think about, Squid and some of the object-oriented proxies of the past, but these are TCP proxies. So the reason that's so important to recognize is while it accomplishes some of the same things, it's encrypted between nodes, OpenVPN client and OpenVPN server, or, ShadowSock's proxy and a ShadowSock's, proxy. It's encrypted in between. The difference is you're splicing the TCP connection instead of encapsulating the TCP connection. The reason that is so important for someone that's trying to maintain their productivity, get faster throughput, utilize this WAN optimization technology is imagine before you could take your Ferrari out onto the road, you've got to pull it up into the back of a semi and let the semi deliver it and then get out and race. This is like, a warp speed tunnel, if you will, where the Ferrari just stays at full speed ahead. It doesn't have to get into a truck that takes a lot longer to start up and move. It's just moving from moment to moment, kind of like a baton handoff, if you will. So you see one TCP connection all the way through. If you're not using any technology, if you're encapsulating with a VPN, you see the VPN connection in the middle. It's encapsulated. It's in the tunnel. And you see the MTU size has to change, or else you get these split packets. I don't know if have you ever looked at the effects of MTU sizes on your network?
Not even a little.
So this is an awesome test to do, I think, for everybody. Every MSP needs to know this, especially as a lot of ISPs are pushing, some services, out that you're not aware of. Just do a ping, from your command prompt. There's a switch. If you just type in ping, you can see the level of switches, list of switches that you can implement. Specify the MTU as 1500. Go out to Google's DNS servers or something you're familiar with and set the do not fragment flag. It's typically like a -D switch. And you'll see that you get a response back from your own network saying, I can't. At 1500, I've got to break that packet into two in order for it to get out to where it needs to go. So that means I'm going to have two packets to get your one packet where it needs to go. The problem is you end up with a pretty full packet and a little bitty not so full packet. If you were to be able to adjust
1492 is the sweet spot or something?
1472 is typically on cable modem, DSL, and those, if you set that do not fragment and your, MTU size, I think it was -L allows you to specify that. 1473, I can't without fragmenting. 1472, you'll start pinging all day long. And without knowing that, a VPN connection is a perfect example. they're already encapsulating it, which means they need a little bit of that space for overhead too in their own messaging. Well, the applications behind it, typically MSPs don't adjust. They just throw the VPN in there and it goes. Well, if you know that VPN is using up part of the link, you can't maximize that throughput. You're taking twice the number of network packets to get the whole thing across. So instead of one dump truck, you're having to send a dump truck that's 90% full and another one that's 5% full twice the time. So a lot of people are chasing latency issues when they implement VPNs that they don't even realize. They're not bandwidth issues at all. They're megabits per second, but it's the time that's incrementing, not the bandwidth that's lowering.
Wow. Okay.
Does that help? Because that's an easy test to do and see.
That does. That really helps, actually. I now want to play with that on my home internet connection because, gigabit, I'm only getting gigabit. I feel like it could be faster.
Hey, my question would be, in a gigabit environment, the most common things that I've seen need some of this technology in that environment is, not really even the SD-WAN. If they have a resilience issue where, there's interruptions at some point, we've got a provider here in town, MetroNet, and there were times where, especially when they first got started, they would have some congestion issues. So if you used a tool like MyTraceRoute, where it's kind of like your traditional trace route, but it's doing ICMP tests every hop, along the way, you could see where at some point in their network they got congested. So their 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond type of response times went up to 150, 200, 300. It's like that's crazy in a fiber environment. And everybody deals with this every now and then. You'll see an outage, with somebody, things will get slow, but nobody really knows how slow it is. You turn something like that up where you can see that. And that's the type of thing that it blips and happens all the time, and people just don't know it, but they feel it. But they move on so quickly that, that's not enough to deal with right now. But an SD-WAN solution can overcome that. But how long does it take to use that connection when you have a packet drop? TCP slow start, it's going to drop and try to pick back up. And if you've got that happening at little frequencies, your transfer pattern is going to look like a sawtooth kind of transfer instead of a nice plateau, uninteresting graph. The uninteresting graphs are sometimes the best performing ones because it's constant. You're getting that full throughput.
Yeah.
I did
Is the MTU something that I set at the router, at the desktop, both?
It typically can be anywhere you have a congestion point, but if there is a change in topology, like let's just say in a traditional, hub and spoke VPN environment, let's say you weren't using us at all for SD-WAN or WAN optimization, and you just wanted to improve your customer's experience, and you've got IPsec tunnels between everything. At that device that's terminating the tunnel, that's where you need to do this test, and that's where you need to change your MTU. Now, we automate those things for you so that you don't have to think about it. We detect some things to know, hey, we need to change the MTU, because it's actually better to have that MTU set lower, like 1400, where you're maybe not even filling up every packet, than to have twice the number of packets or 3 times the number of packets that aren't full or utilized. So, but just in your own, just a freebie there, for your IPsec type of customers, that's the point you want to change the MTU. So when there's a topology change or an encapsulation change,
Okay.
And I really want to emphasize, I love the fact that we're diving into the problems, but this is really, I don't want it to scare people because of how deep we're diving into the problems. The great thing about SD-WAN solutions is it takes this complexity away. So if you're having these types of problems, you don't know where to start, whether it's MTU automation or it's the tunnel automation, it's time that we're saving the MSPs by automating this. So you don't even have to think about it. You put it in and it's managed. It's simplified.
So let's do this, because I agree that we're diving in deep, and I'm honestly just having a lot of fun right now. I'm asking you ridiculous questions. We're just we're having a good conversation. So let's do this. I'm going to share my screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a terminal window.
Okay.
All right. If you suspected that I had some kind of network issues, what can I do in a Mac OS terminal?
Okay. So you've got ping and traceroute available to you, and as simple as those tools are, those are just the de facto things to test with that's already available to you. So, ping out to something is on the other side of your last mile, 8.8.8.8, Google DNS servers. So right here, it's a nice consistent floor, 30 to 40 milliseconds. You can kill that. If we were testing QoS, or we were testing, how efficient is my SD-WAN solution or my QoS policy, WAN optimization, this would be, something you could look at to see. Go ahead and do a trace route as well. Just trace route to 8.8.8.8. So it takes a second for a trace route to complete, but it's doing that same basic test to every hop along the way. A tool that a lot of people would benefit greatly from is my trace route. It's just MTR. And if you're a Mac user, you can use Brew to install it. You can download it from a couple different places for your Windows machine, but it'll essentially combine what you're doing with traceroute and a ping test over and over again, where you see a nice little table of the latency to each hop in the network. And it'll also show you the difference in latency between packets. So jitter is something you hear about in the VoIP world. It's better to have 150 millisecond constant connection than to have 50 milliseconds 1 second and have 120 milliseconds the next. That jitter, the difference between those two back and forth, makes VoIP traffic have that slinky effect. And you can hear that. You can detect that. Jitter is an issue in the VoIP world. An SD-WAN solution can standardize that. We can see that difference in your two connections, and you either prefer one that isn't as bad, or use one over the other, or use a set of connections over another one and just have one for failover, all based on that information that we're constantly looking at on the packets.
Now, gosh, it's been years, and I don't even think this company does what it used to at this point, because there is, how frustrating, how sad. I just don't remember some of these tools. Like I've forgotten more tools and crap that some MSPs have ever even learned, because I'm that guy. I got to play with every flipping thing out in the world, right?
Sure.
So I remember there was this tool for a little while, and it doesn't even do the same thing anymore. But let's see here. I found it. Firebind.
Okay.
I bet they don't do it anymore.
Well, there's a couple that have been out there, like Ping Plotter. There's a few that I've seen ISPs use, but the problem is they're typically only turning them on in a reactive mode, where customers reported an issue, they turn it on and they try to detect what's going on. The great thing about SD-WAN product, let's just talk specifically about cloud access for a second. This stuff is all happening in the background, and it's graphed. So you can see over time, if you got a call about a problem that happened 30 minutes ago, a couple hours ago, you can go back and just look at it. So you get some benefit of automating that. You don't have to know these tools. Some people still use these tools, but that data is just captured. You can be alerted on a link going down so that you know about it before your customer does. As an MSP trying to offer managed services, you really need to be able to feel confident that you know about something before the customer does.
So I remember using this for a little while, Rob. This is their legacy product. I don't even think they will sell it to you anymore. This is Firebind Cloud. And what it would do is it would sit and run on one of the workstations, or server if you want to get crazy. And basically every 5 minutes, it would test and collect all of this data, like jitter, latency, ping, everything. So that way you can look and see if you've got a crappy internet connection or not. And it was really awesome for helping with testing and whatnot. So what would you use if you wanted this pretty graph at a customer site, but you're remote?
Yeah. So, coming out of the carrier world, I've used a lot of SNMP based tools where you got to set a bunch of stuff up to monitor that router. You're collecting it and feeding into some system. And that's kind of the way we used to do things in the past. Those tools are implemented already in things like cloud access. So if you're already seeing, in order to provide this value of resilient uptime, customers swiping a credit card, you don't want that to ever be down, lose a sale. So in the meantime, while that is being provided, if there ever is a problem that you still need to look at and fix, if one network connection goes down, you still need to fix it. Having all of that stuff that you used to have to spend a lot of time to set up being embedded in the tool already, that's a lot of value. Automating network monitoring, we're already looking at all the packets. We can see that stuff. Just put it on the graph and you don't have to set it up. It's already there. This might be one reason to go into a demo at some point on that product where you can see that happening, because what you just showed, tracking latency, tracking packet loss, would there have been a disruption if you didn't have an SD-WAN solution? That helps the MSP show value that, no one ever thinks about the value when it's quiet. It's always, when things are broke. So it's helpful to be able to go in and say, hey, because of this solution we put in for you, in the last month, you've had 3 times that would have been completely down, maybe even for the day, or just interrupted. You can quantify that and show it very clearly with visual tools.
Okay. That's cool.
So I don't think you need a tool like that as much as you used to.
Okay. Now, when I pulled up the terminal, my thought was you were going to tell me some like magical, here's how you find your MTU.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that right now. Go ahead.
All right. Let me pull that back up. So many windows to choose from. All right. So back into terminal. So this is the exact same terminal. I'll just clear here. So if I wanted to find my MTU.
Right. You said you're on a Mac, right?
I know. This is my Mac.
Okay.
I know I could do like a ping. How many pings do I need? Like 2,000?
Yeah, I mean, just do like a -C with 1,000.
And then I know -D will tell it not to fragment.
Right. And let's see for the size.
And then -S is the size.
Right.
So we want to do 1472, you said. Well, no, let's do 1,500. Let's
do 1,500 because, that's the thing to recognize. Why are we even talking about this? The whole point is a lot of people have routers that they commercially bought at Best Buy or Ubiquity, and that MTU is often set as 1,500, which is the default for Ethernet, but the topology changes to cable modem. Mm-hmm. So it's not accounted for. So at 1,500, it's having to split that, and you're not able to maximize your throughput, whether you use SD-WAN or not.
I don't think I need 1,000. I think all I need is 1. So when I look at this at 1,500, message too long. 1,490, message too long.
Right.
1,480.
Try 1,400.
Message too long. Well, we know 1,400 works.
So for 1,470, 1,480. Try both of those.
I know 1,472 works.
1,472 and 1,473 is typically where I find the line.
73 is a no.
Right. Yep. So that means that if you have something, if you put Wireshark on your laptop right now, or let's say you had a router that you could do a capture there. If you do a capture and you see those packets, you're going to see, they're full coming in, and then you've got more coming out, because it's got to split them up. It's got to, twice the number of packets. And people don't realize the impact of that, but you're sometimes talking about, twice the latency gain at an application layer to get that back and forth before you can get the next packet.
I can also tell you that my Mac hardware, the Wi-Fi adapter itself, the default is 1500.
Okay.
So I'm going to manually set that to 1472, and everything's magically more amazing.
I would typically try to set it, the closest to the topology change as you can. It's okay, to do it, closer to you if you know that within a couple hops you're going to have a topology change. But this is the great thing about SD-WAN. We can manage that in an automated way, because as simple as this test is, that everybody can do to improve their existing connection right now. You don't need to buy anything from anybody. You can do that test right now, change that on your router, and you will immediately see better throughput. No question. In an enterprise environment, or if they change connections on you, a lot of times the customer's not buying circuits from you. They're going out and buying something because they got a deal, sales guy approached them and they call you when there's problems. If it's your box, a CPE, device running, and they plug that up there, guess what? It's automatically detected.
Man. So then what I think I'm hearing you say is my Wi-Fi adapter on my Mac can be at 1500.
Yeah, if you want it to be.
Because going from my Mac to my router would still be a 1500 MTU? Or it's just so fast between the two that it shouldn't matter?
Yeah, let's just talk about for a second. Let's forget cloud or internet connections at all. Let's just say you've got a switch at home and you've got two things connected, Ethernet to Ethernet.
Mm-hmm.
From there to there, you want all that to be 1500. So that
why?
Because that is the max that Ethernet frames can handle, unless you're doing jumbo frame, which a lot of people have seen as a checkbox but never had to use it. Jumbo frames are, I think, 9,000 or something inside your network. So if you do big data, you're talking about, multimedia producing shops where they're in a 10 gig network. You don't want to be restricted to these characteristics of TCP in that environment. So jumbo frames are one of the things that you could do. And this is, again, whether you use SD-WAN or not, whether you're combining connections, these are problems inside the LAN. So you can do that. So that's why I say it's always better to put it as close to the topology change as possible. And the great thing about an SD-WAN product is, you're putting it right there behind the internet connection. So that's pretty much within one hop of where it needs to happen. And it doesn't impact your firewall or LAN or anything inside. And you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Now let's take a look at some comments here. Now I'm going way back, guys. All right. So we were talking about VPN for a while, and I started talking about the evil hacker man, right? So let's think about, it doesn't have to be an evil hacker man. It could just be a law office or a HIPAA compliant type of place that wants to be certain of privacy. So we know that they can have privacy that goes from their internet node, from their office, all the way, however many hops it takes, to wherever that SD-WAN provider's data center is. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Your data center is up to you. What I would recommend is, if you've got customers in Eastern United States, you pick a data center that's closer to there. But the great thing about the internet is when you get to the data center level, you're now talking about major connections between all of them, where you're sub, 10 millisecond connectivity between all of them anyway. You just don't want to have a case where you put something all the way out in California that's the exit node for somebody that's trying to, work out of Kentucky,
Right. So let me rephrase. I guess when I think of this, I'm still on the OmniWet mindset of, I don't know where that data center is. It's wherever OmniNet is, maybe Texas for all I know.
Right.
So when you sell us our custom SD-WAN as an MSP, we put it in a data center of our choosing. That data center doesn't have to be a physical data center near us. We could use an Amazon or a Microsoft Azure, right?
OVH is a very popular one just because it's super easy to work with. And you're
or
in control of
DigitalOcean or one of those.
Yeah, DigitalOcean, that's fine.
Okay. So it doesn't even need to be a big fancy like Microsoft server on Azure. It can just be a Linux box on some kind of DigitalOcean droplet,
correct,
or OVH. Okay, so we figured that part out. So when my client transmits their data, whatever this data is, it's going from their office. We'll call it to OVH, and then it disperses out to where it needs to go.
Correct.
Similarly, if I purchased NordVPN, it's being encrypted through a special VPN packet or tunnel or whatever. It's going from my office or home to wherever the NordVPN tunnel data center is, probably some OVH somewhere else, and then out to the internet somewhere, right?
Right.
So both of them work similarly. The difference is SD-WAN gives us the ability to really customize the technology that's happening at that data center server, whereas a VPN, it's you're just paying for whatever they give you.
Yeah, I mean, your packets at some point are going to route through a data center anyway. You know, let's say Lexington, Kentucky. You know, I used to work for the cable company. You're going to go through the same path to get to the internet, whether you're accessing Office 365 with a plain internet connection, or if you're using it across an SD-WAN connection. It just might be a different data center along the way to the data center that Office 365 is at.
Right. But the main difference is, one is, I'm going to call it encrypted, and the other one's not, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the same would apply for if we were using a VPN instead of SD-WAN. One is encrypted and one's not, right?
Essentially, yeah.
That's the theory we're going with when we use these tools?
Well, like I said, effectively, a VPN and some of these tools look the same in the sense that I see a different IP, or this site, they tell you what IP they see you coming from. That's going to change with an SD-WAN product or a VPN. The difference is, are you managing this VPN? Do you know where it's coming out of? NordVPN, you can select which data center you want to come out of, but that's about, I think, the max level of control you've got. In an enterprise environment, especially, you probably wouldn't want to use that. This is more, I think, a residential, user type of context. So,
and let's make up a VPN. Okay, we'll call it Steve VPN. The slogan: "You can trust us, I swear." So when you use Steve VPN, it has a nice ring to it. Steve VPN.
That man
rolls off the tongue. All right. So when you use this service, really all you can control is maybe what point you're connecting to, where it comes out of, whatever. Right. So, like you said earlier, you're shifting the trust. You're shifting the responsibility, whatever you want to look at. So do you trust Spectrum Cable to read it at your house? Or do you trust Spectrum Cable to be reading it at the other end on that data center that they're also using Spectrum when it comes out of the VPN?
But if your VPN server is in OVH, all they see is an encrypted connection across their network. They can't see the data inside. They can't analyze your traffic surfing patterns.
Sure, but then it's got to come out of the VPN, right?
Well, and yes. So let's say you're hosted at OVH. How many hops are there between OVH and whatever it is you're trying to get to? There's still risk, so to speak, within that range. But if you do a trace route, you'll see that instead of your residential or business traditional 15 hops to get there, you're significantly less going data center to data center. And if you want to minimize that even further, this is where an enterprise would get like a private Azure instance to put whatever software they're going to put on it, whether it's a SD-WAN or WAN optimization. They want it hosted as close to their application as possible, so that there's a kitty cat. We've got two, so I don't have them here at the office, but
home office.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be back in the office, somewhat, but, and that's a good context too for, talking about WAN optimization. Most people don't have MPLS to the home. Most people don't have fiber to the home. It's great if you have it, but it's amazing how many people I've seen trying to do a family of two kids and two adults trying to do Zoom for school, Zoom for work, YouTube during breaks, and the home traffic has grown exponentially over a residential cable modem DSL connection. It makes it hard. So enterprises that are trying to get better access to their applications, it's a great use case for Replify. If you've got something that is critical, you can't have any downtime, but you can afford, a cable modem and a DSL connection. You can use the Ethica product for small office, home office stuff.
So let's talk about some of these comments, and then I want to talk to you about just some kind of basic, what are we looking at price wise to do some of these things? Okay. I'm talking ballparks. Obviously, everything's going to be a little different, right? Mm-hmm. So here's one that I think this was what I was trying to get out of you. So Yates Networks, first, I'm both privacy and security conscious, and that's going to be my new mission statement. That said, I would far rather ExpressVPN or private internet access to my data than Spectrum. So basically, they're saying they trust the VPN provider to manage the connection and look at the data and whatever else. They trust them more than they trust Spectrum.
Sure.
Is that, and I'm not asking, are they stupid? Okay. I'm just asking, with your experience with everything that you've done with networks and everything else, is that a good idea?
I would absolutely say yes. If they have that level of concern, one of the things to look at that really helps see why it's a concern. Even with encrypted traffic, you go to HTTPS, whatever.com. There's a field called the SNI field where you can see, what it is that you're going to. And that's in the middle. You can see it even if it's encrypted. There are other things that you could deduce it from, like maybe who owns the subnet and stuff like that. But that's one of the mechanisms that your ISP, using systems like Sandvine, can see what you're going to. They can throttle access to it. As a WISP, you've got the ability to do things like that under the net neutrality laws as it stands, more than someone like Spectrum can, because they're terrestrial. But you are absolutely making the right decision. I want to make sure that your audience is differentiating what I'm saying, though. ExpressVPN isn't something that you would see a small to medium business who's swiping credit cards use, but they need that same thing, and they need it managed pretty cost effectively. So that's where your SD-WAN.
He's talking more about maybe the work from home people.
Yeah, the work from home people. I mean, it's not a bad idea. But the question I would ask is, have you ever had application performance issues? And if so, let's say you had a company with 10 or 15 remote workers that were all now working from home, and they have to access whatever they're accessing over a VPN, regulated environment, not ExpressVPN, but something that is in their data center. So your MSP or your IT guy is hosting that in your data center. And you've got all of these clients working from home, Windows machines that you manage, just to keep it simple. In that context, you can keep the VPN and layer Replify in that solution, where you have the Replify node there in the same data center as your VPN. And you now also have the Replify client on all of those. Let's say Cisco VPN or something that's more enterprise, focused. Now, when there are drops in the VPN or problems, you're going to get more throughput, better consistency. We can quantify it with certain applications, but like SMB traffic, if you're trying to browse an SMB share from home over VPN, it's clunky. It takes more time. People can feel the difference working from home than in the office, even if they are on a gigabit connection. So if you're working over VPN in that environment and you put Replify in it, you're going to see it incredibly snappy. You're going to see the throughput better. And if you work on files where you're constantly making updates to files and your team members are downloading that and you're collaborating back and forth, you may only be changing 10% of the file. So let's talk about the way, deduplication works. When it's looking at the byte level, it sees a common chunk. It indexes that, and it's in a way that's not identifiable, so you don't have to worry about HIPAA regulations or anything like that. You're only sending, let's say, a 64K hash for every 4K chunk of data, a 64 byte hash for every 4K chunk of data. Think about the significance there. Just to see this, we do have a demo on a device that we had done a couple of years ago, Proxabyte. But it was hard for people to understand, WAN optimization. So it was hard to, if it's hard to get MSPs to understand it, it's hard to, get businesses to understand it. So you can see it really easy where you have a speedtest.net test going. You got 10 megabit per second. You put Replify in it and it goes up to 100 megabit per second. And people are like, how can you do that? As we see common chunks of data go across the wire and index it that fast, what actually goes across the wire is just an index. Think about, just to give like a really simple analogy here, let's say that Library of Alexandria on the other side of the earth was still operating. They had these big ancient books, and you wanted that big ancient book. The time it would take to send that over, to get your copy of it, it would take a while. Well, if you knew the Dewey Decimal number and you knew it, and you also had another sister library here in the States or, right next door, you could just go get that book because you knew exactly what it was based on the Dewey Decimal number. Similar concept. You build up a library of these chunks of data, and you would be surprised how much of the internet is repetitive. How many websites all use Bootstrap to start or use WordPress? 90% of the framework's the same. Google Analytics, there's one piece of it that's different, that big JavaScript payload. There's a lot of what we do that's repetitive that we don't even think about. And that's where Replify really helps. You'll see every bit between you and the client and the server and the application. You'll see that in a packet capture still go across, but Replify manages, that as one of its features. We're compressing the data, deduplicating the data, and optimizing TCP and these other things to make it incredibly fast. So, speedtest.net test 10 meg to 100 meg. It just blows your mind how it can help when you're working remotely. I think, is that a question?
So here's another one, and it's not really a question as much as it's just Tara said that the idea is our clients still have an obligation to keep medical, financial, personal identity, all of this stuff. All of it needs to stay private. Right. So we have to implement solutions that protect that data from whoever. And what Tara is hearing is that the solution doesn't have to be slow.
Right.
And that's what they're here to learn about. Speed is great, but we can't compromise safety. And And I agree. It sounds like what you're offering us is both.
Absolutely.
If we use SD-WAN over a VPN.
Yeah. Again, you're getting more security because you're in control of point A to point B. You don't have to rely on anybody else that you may or may not trust. They get a compromised key or whatever. It's you don't have that issue. And with Replify, keeping a library of the data, it's stored in a way that can't be reassembled by human beings. So you're not talking about, personally identifying information being even captured or HIPAA compliance being violated. It's inline. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Don't worry about it. I'll read it out. You could just keep talking and don't lose your train of thought. I don't mean to confuse you.
No, this is actually great. These are great questions. One of the prime audiences we want to address are the MSPs with a data center, or even just OVH, or they understand how to use those tools, and they're in control of the data center.
Sounds cool.
I mean, being able to use your own resources if you already have a data center, now you've got a way to monetize those better. If you don't, you can start making margin on these tools instead of, let's say you went to your carrier, to say, hey, I need an SD-WAN solution, just to make sure we're in, alignment here. You're talking about $500, $600 a month sometimes for those,
just for them to check a box.
Yeah, just for exactly. So, if you're talking about MPLS circuits, you may not even be able to get MPLS circuit to where you're at. So you may have build out costs, So, being able to start with something that has, depending on your level of expertise, no essential capital to start up, and having per site license, let's say, under $100 a month, being able to charge per meg yourself if you want to charge in a metered way, where the MSP is now capturing that, and they're using the same caliber software as the big telecoms, you're more in control. Give you another example where this has been valuable. A lot of ISPs want to book revenue. So, like a lot of companies, and they have 12-month contracts, especially if you get that new fiber circuit, right? So you get IPs and subnets, you grant access to certain applications, and it's using the IPs that's in the ISP's control. You're not in control of that. If you're an SD-WAN solution, you can get a new provider set up, ready to go, so that the day the other one expires, you don't have to change anything that day. So when you start talking about MSPs now juggling and project managing the implementation of an internet circuit and all of the ramifications, whether it's access lists or, the new VPN endpoint has to change, so they have to change that in their clients. You're not using that anymore. You're using something that's in your control. So you can set it up during the day. You don't have to do it during the maintenance window. You don't have to wake up, heart palpitating to, that alert that you've heard, too many times you need PTSD therapy for, you can do it during the day. You can change that over, with one flip of a switch, or just let it die off whenever they stop billing for it. And nothing changes from the customer's perspective.
So, Rob, we're going to have to wrap up here in a few minutes, like actually wrap up, not do one of those pretend wrap ups. So I want to try and get through, I'm going to call it the lightning round. Okay. So Yates Networks said, this is a very unique and sorely needed product for medium and larger MSPs. I agree with that, but can't it also be used by small MSPs?
Absolutely. Most of the providers that we've seen that offer this, $15,000, $20,000 if you want to own the software, sometimes 50 to 60. It makes it inaccessible. A small to medium MSP, they've got to have a critical mass just to justify starting. And that's what we want to do. We want to help these MSPs just hit their run running with site-based pricing. And, if you need couple hours of our time, we account for that more as a consultative kind of arrangement, but that makes it to where it's you pay for what you need, not just to turn on the switch. And absolutely, that's why we love working with Ethica has been great. That's their whole model is instead of waiting for these big guys to get a partner set up and try to offer it in this way, they're ready to go, and they're focused on some different areas, but with these other three relationships that we've had, it all works well together. And if you don't need SD-WAN, you need WAN optimization. It's not you're not wasting your time. We right fit you with the right one, and you might grow into needing SD-WAN, or if you start the other way, you might grow into WAN optimization. But it saves you a lot of time figuring out which of the tools are best for you, while still not having to make that capital investment to start,
So I just want to clarify, because I just got an email. Does Rob's company sell direct, or do they have a channel program? So you have a whole channel program. In fact, I don't know that you sell direct.
Yeah. So Alan Fortier, who I've actually worked with in the past for an OEM partner of Replify's that didn't make it. Their focus was an oil and gas company, and it died when price of barrel went to $20 a barrel. Their whole business model imploded. Alan's been great to work with. We have a very similar background. Read up on Alan Fortier. He'll be the guy that most people interface when we start talking, building a relationship. But that's what we're focused on. And sales and engineering together, we're focused on that the same way.
And I didn't even realize that it was out. So I just see in my email thing, Alan, question.
Yeah.
Does Rob's company sell? I'm like, what a knucklehead. All right. So let's talk about the pricing stuff for a moment. You made it sound like some of this stuff is just some software you put on a computer.
Yeah.
All right. So, give me the 15-second version. What can I do with the software that I put on my computer?
So,
is it SD-WAN?
Cloud access, the SD-WAN component, that cannot run on your computer. You do need to put that on a box that is in front of your firewall, essentially, between the modem and the firewall. That way you can plug up multiple connections to it. Replify, it can be deployed a couple ways. It can be deployed that same way where it's inline on a box, where you have kind of a IPsec, LAN to LAN type of setup.
Sure.
Or what I think a lot of MSPs would prefer is just push button deploying it. If you got Active Directory or some RMM tool and you've got a PC that you can install software on, you just install the client. It's the same technology that would go in a box just as a Windows client. Roll it out that way.
Okay. And Replify, yes or no? Do we need to set up like a whole OVH server and all that to use Replify? You do.
It's a bookshelf component as well. So you're going to optimize a link. So there has to be something doing and undoing on both sides. And you can use OVH, DigitalOcean. It's a pretty lean system. So it's not a big investment by any means to spin up a server.
Oh, that's fine. Is Replify storing the data or anything that it's deduping?
So this is not object oriented. So there is no concept of a file or something that you could go in and cherry pick out of a library somewhere. There are chunks of data, but just like your packets flowing across your, connection, it's kept in a library in that format, so it can't be reassembled. You can even turn on encryption if you need, just to know for sure that all these chunks are encrypted. There's just no real need to it for most contexts, but it's not a long-term storage. So it's the more chunks are referenced, the more they float to the top of the byte cache, if you will, and then things churn out if they're something you've used once and no one else has referenced it.
So is Replify like working across the whole internet then for me? Like,
yeah,
if it sees I keep going to WordPress websites, it's going to keep loading some of the WordPress libraries, that kind of thing?
That purely depends. The great thing about it is you can put in, I want it to do something for a single server with a single IP address, and that's the only thing I want to do. You can say, I want to do this entire subnet, or I can do the entire internet as a whole, 0.0.0.0. It's going to intercept everything. And if it can optimize it, it will. If it can deduplicate it, it will. You can apply a lot of policies to different things, but there is a nice, default policy we've got that fits most people's needs.
Would you say Replify is a nice dip your toe in the water and see if this is for you kind of thing before they dive in with SD-WAN with you guys?
I think it's definitely the easiest for us to let someone try it as a demo. Where you don't need to worry about authentication or anything. We can spin up something, let you try it. If you want to try it, you can actually download it straight from Replify, but you've got to set up your own server, know how to configure it. We can do all that for you. Like I said, because we're a value-added distributor, get you better pricing. So yeah, it's something we can do on a just one-off basis. So if you want to try it on your laptop, we can get you the Replify client, and you don't have to worry about all this stuff in the background.
Let's say I'm a weirdo, Rob, and I want to just run Replify on my Mac.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about my clients or anything yet. But I don't want to try it for like the 10, 30, whatever days. I want this thing for the long haul. What am I looking at price wise to get that through you?
I'm going to unfortunately have to defer that to Alan. If you're talking about a single user, we don't really sell it that way. We've got a
single user with the intention of eventually having more, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to run it myself for now. And then once I finally get it, then I'm going to start selling it to my clients.
Yeah. So there's a price point for the server that we could, do an extended trial for, I think. And then, per user, we can license it to you perpetually if you want to just own it, or do a monthly. The monthly we got to assess based on volume. But,
sure.
I'll put it this way. You get, when you do it that way, you get competitive with ExpressVPN Nord, on the per user pricing.
Gotcha.
So independent of your initial structure there.
So we're not at like pennies or something like that for an endpoint. We're probably talking $5 to $10 for an endpoint, depending on volume.
Yeah, depending on volume. Absolutely.
And with this type of product, do we have to worry about like bandwidth or any of that stuff?
So wherever the Replify server component sits, it needs to be in a data center that has good throughput.
Let me rephrase. I don't have to pay per gig or anything. Replify, it's just software. It works.
That's what I want to make that very clear with both products. Cloud Access, Replify, there is no metered charge based on usage, and that is fundamentally different than most of the solutions you see out there today. Most people are charging per megabit or on some type of tiered pricing, and no, you absolutely not. Now, if someone has a use case, they want to build that model out and host it as a service themselves to do that, we can help an MSP provide that as a service, but no.
All right. And then SD-WAN type stuff. Let's say I'm going all in, Rob. I've got some clients. We need to get some SD-WAN. And it's not because we're trying to build an MPLS. We just want smarter internet and some additional security, right?
Right.
So what are we talking? We got to buy some hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Ballpark, how much does this hardware cost for a 10 to 25 user environment?
Yeah. In that type of environment, $200-$300, we can even tell you the Quotom type of model to go with. It's an easy one. We know it's vetted. It works well. If you want to buy it yourself and put the software on it, you're free to do so. So we're not actually trying to sell you hardware. We can and provision that, if that's easier to help your model. But a lot of people have access to the hardware they want to use. Put their sticker on it, my support number. You're their resource. You're the MSP. And we want to help you implement that. So you don't have to buy the hardware from us.
Okay. Well, no, and that's fine. I'm just trying to get like the big picture of,
yeah, right.
We're going to spend a couple $100, few $100 on some hardware.
Yep.
And then ballpark for the software or the SD-WAN service.
Mm-hmm.
Another couple $100.
Less than that. On a per site basis, less than that. Way less than that. If you're talking about a business,
less than $100.
This is where we need to connect you with Alan Fortier. He will take great care of you. Oh
man. Okay. He's squirrely with the pricing, guys.
Well, the one thing we're never going to do is try to get budgetary pricing out of you. We're not a Walmart where it's a one size fits all type of product, So we don't want to just put a pricing out there and have an expectation that it comes with the other things if you need those. So it's better to have a conversation. Sure.
No, and I get that. I guess I was just trying to get people under 200's good. I mean, it's 500
Absolutely.
from the ISP. I mean, so, and then we still have to get the OVH server, whether it's Replify or Cloud Access. Does Cloud Access need a beefier OVH server than Replify?
I don't think so. It again depends on what you're doing. The reason I say that, we had a customer that had they were doing a game development, and I don't remember. I think it was Perforce was the name of the system they were making these commits to, but because they're doing some really large stuff back and forth, they needed, a little bit beefier equipment. But their guys loved it, and they told me this was a good one. They told me that paid for the solution in like 2 weeks, just based on the fact that their developers were able to make the commits on time and not have to wait hours for uploads and downloads to occur, because they're only making small changes to some of these big, huge files. Think in that context, like CAD guys, those files can get big, same thing with 3D rendering and stuff. So, it does depend on the use case on the hardware, but, for your typical user working from home, like I said, a couple $100 for the hardware.
Okay. So a couple $100 for the hardware. We're talking under $100 a month for the OVH for many of our typical clients, where, especially if I'm talking the 10 to 25 user type of place. Like, obviously the larger offices, maybe they need some kind of crazy server, multiple server. I don't know. Obviously we got to talk to you for the larger or the more interesting type of setups, but the typical 10 to 25 user office is what I'm kind of thinking of in my mind right now. And then final question, Replify and Cloud Access.
Mm-hmm.
Does it happen? Is it good?
Absolutely, man. It's
okay.
It's good. Not only can you stack and make the connection resilient, but you can optimize that combined link and just absolutely scream. It's awesome. So
now here's where it gets real interesting. What's running Replipit? Is it at the endpoints? Okay. Is it over in OVH? Is it on the same server as Cloud Access? Is it a different server? Where is it screaming more?
Okay.
Do I put it everywhere?
No. Okay. Yeah, put it everywhere, right? So my recommendation, as an engineer, I have to say depends, but I've had a lot of people try to integrate it so that it's running as a service on a same box with lots of other things on it. And, the cost of cloud servers today, especially if you're a MSP and you've got customers that are really going to use this, you put a dedicated controller there with Ethica, Cloud Access on it, one with Replify, and same thing with, the CPE side, put the Cloud Access there, on site on a box, but then just put Replify on the Windows or Mac machines that need it. You don't have to spend time putting it on the box. We really, I've seen more successful use cases where people are putting it on their machines, Replify, especially in the MSP environment, where you know what your customers want to have access to. And there's sometimes you've got that one application that's like a healthcare or the dentist environment. You want that to come over here, but for the rest of the internet traffic, you want it to go out somewhere else. And you can do all that with Replify. So it's been more successful to just deploy it where it's needed with specificity. And that's also where Netify helps. We've helped uncover some things on people's networks. We didn't really get a lot to talk about, Netify, but
that's so cool.
Yeah. What anomalies are on your network?
I want to have you back. I want to talk. I'm going to have you back 3 times because I'm going to have you come in. I want you to bring the vendors, bring like the marketing person. That way they can explain it to me like I'm 5'2". Okay.
Absolutely. I think they will all embrace that because, I love working with MSPs, but the thing that I've learned about, it's hard to work with MSPs for these guys. That's why they focus on the bigger opportunities and it leaves MSPs behind. It leaves small businesses behind because of that. Because most SMBs are relying on that tech guy that they know and trust. So they would love to, talk directly to you and your audience.
Well, guys, you need to call Alan. Go over to leadfoottech.com. I'm going to put that up here. There you go. Leadfoottech.com. It is a T in Leadfoot, not Leadfoot, not Leadfood. Okay, it's Leadfoot. When you go there, I believe they've right on the homepage. It just says Cloud Channel Partner Inquiries. You just shoot that an email, and I believe it'll be Alan that responds. Alan will take care of you, get you probably ask you a bazillion questions so that way they can understand your use case and then get you pricing and explain what you're getting and how to use it correctly and all that. And if we're just dummies with Linux, we can even pay a little extra and have you set it up for us. And
totally.
Cool. All right, Rob, this was awesome, man. I can't wait.
Glad to talk with you, man. Very cool. Thank you for having us.
Yates said you should rebrand to SpeedNet.
SpeedNet? Hey, I'm all about helping maybe Yates Network do just that. Yates Network, give us a call and we'll help you get SpeedyNet up and going. Seriously.
You can call it SPDY Net.
Google might not like that one, but
no, they might not like that one. All right. Well, Rob, thank you. Everyone that was here, especially this whole time. We did over 2 hours today, but for the podcast, obviously, it's not that long. Thanks so much, guys. Hey, thanks for listening to part 3. Be sure to check back tomorrow for the next episode.